Beneath the unforgiving glare of a sun that feels almost too close, lies a realm both desolate and alive, a coastal desert where nature's whispers take on a haunting edge. Here, towering dunes stretch endlessly, their golden peaks never the same, shifting as though they possess wills of their own. The wind is relentless, carving paths through the sand with ghostly precision, carrying with it an eerie silence that seems to watch from the periphery. This is no ordinary desert. It breathes, it listens, and for centuries it has guarded its secrets well, maybe too well. At its edge, nestled precariously between the merciless sands and the unyielding sea, there was once a village. Sablemoor, a place that thrived, its people weaving stories of resilience and survival amidst these harsh elements. But now it lies hollow, consumed and swallowed by the shifting sands. Its wooden beams and cobblestone alleys are little more than whispers beneath a golden grave. The locals tell of strange curses, sudden disappearances, and ancient relics that should have never been unearthed. They say the dunes are alive, that they choose their victims, and that no one who ventures too far ever returns. It is against this backdrop of decay and foreboding that we meet Eleanor Graves, a woman whose presence is like the sharp edge of a desert crescent blade, focused, driven, yet carrying the scars of a past that still clings to her like dust on her boots. An archaeologist and historian, Eleanor is no stranger to mysteries or the risks that come with chasing them. But even she cannot ignore the unease rippling through her chest as she holds the letter in her hands. It arrived without warning, its edges frayed, its words cryptic. Only one thing stands out, the name of its sender, a mentor she thought lost to time, a figure who had once been her guiding star, but who vanished years ago under circumstances she could never quite piece together. The letter is an invitation and a warning, its message clear. The truths Eleanor has been searching for her entire life may finally be within her grasp, buried deep within these deadly dunes. Yet the letter's ominous tone suggests that uncovering them may come at a cost she cannot yet fathom. With this, the stakes are set. For Eleanor, the call to adventure is impossible to resist, even as the sands seem to shift more ominously the closer she steps toward them. What secrets could be so dangerous they wiped an entire village from memory? What truths lie beneath those sun-scorched peaks, and what has her mentor left behind for her to find? The dunes do not offer their answers freely, and for Eleanor Graves, this journey is not just about solving a puzzle. It is about confronting the past, her past, and making sense of the haunting whispers that have followed her all her life. The sands are waiting, the shadows stretch long, and what lies ahead may very well change everything Eleanor thought she knew. With the next phase of the journey in sight, Eleanor Graves steps off the rickety carriage that has carried her through miles of barren land. Before her stretches the edge of the coastal desert, where the world seems to split in two. To her left, the sea churns angrily, its waves crashing against jagged rocks as if in warning. To her right, the dunes rise like sleeping giants, their shifting contours catching the light in a way that feels almost alive. The wind greets her with an unrelenting force, carrying the scent of salt and the faintest undertone of decay. It howls low and steady, as if whispering secrets she cannot yet understand. Eleanor adjusts her wide-brimmed hat, her eyes scanning the horizon with a mix of determination and unease. The reality of the landscape is more intimidating than she had imagined from the sketches and maps in her possession. The letter, now tucked into her satchel, feels heavier than ever, as though it carries the weight of every unanswered question she has been avoiding. Ahead lies Sablemoor, a village that clings to existence where the sands and sea collide. Its presence is as unwelcoming as the desert itself. The buildings are weathered and gnarled, their wooden frames warped by the salty air and time's relentless grasp. Windows sit like empty eyes, many of them boarded up, as if the village itself is trying to shield itself from what lies beyond. Eleanor's footsteps echo, unnervingly loud, as she makes her way through the main street, but no one emerges to greet her. The few faces she does glimpse quickly look away, as though her arrival has confirmed their worst fears. Whispers drift from shuttered windows, snippets of half-heard words that dissolve into the wind. Steeling herself, Eleanor makes her first stop at the village inn, a tired building whose sign swings precariously in the breeze. Inside, she meets Samuel Kane, the innkeeper, whose demeanor matches the inn's creaking floorboards, rough, worn, and untrustworthy. His eyes are sharp, calculating, as though he has sized Eleanor up the moment she crossed the threshold. He speaks gruffly, his words clipped, offering no more than necessary. The walls behind the counter are cluttered with odd trinkets, scraps of metal, and carvings that seem like idle curiosities at first glance, but leave an impression of deliberate placement. Samuel's warnings are subtle but pointed. The Dunes have no mercy, and those who meddle often regret it. Eleanor leaves the inn with her room key heavier than it should be, her thoughts unsettled. She next visits the small library, a stone building that leans precariously as though it too is fighting to avoid being consumed by the dunes. There, she meets Clara Hawthorne, a librarian whose quiet voice carries a weight that belies her youthful appearance. Clara's pale hands tremble slightly as she hands Eleanor a book of local legends, her eyes darting to the door as if expecting someone to burst in at any moment. The pendant around Clara's neck catches the light, displaying a strange symbol Eleanor recognizes but cannot place. Clara's hesitant answers to Eleanor's questions only deepen the mystery, her every word careful yet loaded with unspoken meaning. Finally, Eleanor seeks out Father Declan Moran, the village priest whose weathered face seems carved from stone. The chapel is small and austere, its pews empty, its walls adorned with symbols that seem more suited to the dunes than to any known faith. Father Declan speaks of the desert as though it is a living force, one that demands respect and fear in equal measure. His voice is calm, but carries an undercurrent of something Eleanor cannot place knowledge, perhaps, or guilt. Before she leaves, he warns her cryptically. The dunes do not forgive those who take what is not theirs. As the sun dips lower on the horizon, painting the dunes in hues of amber and crimson, Eleanor returns to her room at the inn. She sits on the edge of the small, creaking bed, her mind racing. The pieces of the puzzle are scattered, and every new face she has met seems to add another layer to the enigma. The weight of the letter feels unbearable now, its cryptic message echoing in her mind. Despite the warnings, despite the unease that seeps into her very bones, Eleanor's resolve only hardens. She will uncover the truth, no matter the cost. With the dunes casting long, ominous shadows over the village, Eleanor does not yet know that this is only the beginning. As the sun rises on the next chapter, the whispers of Sablemoor's legends begin to weave their way into Eleanor's investigation. The library, dimly lit and heavy with the scent of aged parchment, becomes her sanctuary. Clara Hawthorne sits nearby, her presence both helpful and enigmatic, as though she herself is part of the mystery. Clara hesitates before speaking, her voice a soft murmur as she recounts the stories passed down through the village. She tells of ancient travelers who ventured into the dunes seeking fortune or escape, only to vanish without a trace. Their cries, it is said, can still be heard on the wind during the darkest hours of the night. Father Declan's eerie words from the previous evening seem to echo in the stillness as Eleanor listens. He had spoken of caravans laden with gold, swallowed whole by the desert, their treasures lost to time. Among these tales, one stands out, a fabled artifact known as the Crimson Compass. Clara's eyes dart nervously to the shelves as she speaks of it. The compass, she explains, is said to reveal the secrets of the dunes, guiding its bearer through the ever-shifting sands. But the villagers believe it carries a curse, one that brings misfortune and madness to all who seek it. Eleanor's hands move instinctively to the book Clara has handed her, its leather cover cracked with age. As she turns the pages, she finds detailed sketches of the dunes, strange symbols etched into their curves, and fragmented stories that hint at an ancient civilization lost beneath the sands. One sketch in particular captures her attention, a depiction of the Crimson Compass, its intricate design surrounded by cryptic annotations. The artifact is illustrated as a circular object, finely detailed with markings that seem to shift and change even as she stares at the page. Clara shifts uneasily in her seat, finally whispering, "The Crimson Compass is meant to guide, but it demands a price. They say to follow it is to offer yourself to the dunes." Her words add weight to the air around them, but Eleanor presses on, her curiosity overcoming her unease. She turns to another passage in the book, finding references to haunting whispers carried by the wind. According to the text, these whispers are believed to be the voices of those the dunes have claimed, forever warning others to stay away. As the hours pass, Eleanor's resolve deepens. She scours the shelves, pulling book after book, her fingers smudged with dust and her mind racing with questions. It is then, tucked between the fragile pages of an unassuming volume, that she finds it a faded map. It is hand-drawn and barely legible, marked with jagged lines that denote the dunes' most treacherous paths. At first glance, it appears useless, its markings disordered and chaotic. But then her eyes catch on something, a small but deliberate X scrawled at a remote spot deep within the sands. Her heart quickens as she traces the ink with her fingertips. Clara peers over her shoulder, her breath hitching softly at the sight. "That place," Clara whispers, barely audible. "It's not on any map I've seen before." Eleanor folds the map carefully, slipping it into her satchel alongside the letter. For the first time, a piece of the mystery has taken shape. The path ahead is perilous, and the legends she has unearthed weigh heavily on her mind. Yet beneath the unease, a spark of determination lights within her. She cannot turn back now. The dunes are calling, and the journey into their heart is about to begin. Moving forward, Eleanor's investigation takes her out of the library and into the heart of Sablemoor, where the villagers' guarded faces speak volumes without a word being uttered. The narrow streets wind through modest homes and weathered buildings, and her inquiries are met with sidelong glances and murmured conversations abruptly silenced as she passes. The air is heavy, not just with suspicion, but with a palpable fear that clings to the residents like a second skin. Her first stop is the inn, where Samuel Kane looms behind the bar, his rugged frame and unnerving silence adding to the inn's dim, claustrophobic atmosphere. The walls are adorned with peculiar trinkets, carved wooden symbols, and dried herbs hanging like talismans. Samuel's icy gaze lingers as Eleanor cautiously broaches the subject of the dunes. His responses are curt, his tone flat, but his knuckles whiten as he grips a mug tightly, a tension he cannot completely hide. Eleanor's eyes catch on the scars that crisscross his hands and forearms, marks that speak of struggle, though whether they tell a story of survival or guilt remains unclear. When she presses gently, his jaw tightens. "Some things are better left buried," he mutters, his words as much a warning as a dismissal. Determined but unsettled, she seeks out Clara next, finding her outside the library, gazing absently at the dunes in the distance. At first, Clara is composed, her usual quiet demeanor intact, but as Eleanor probes into the pendant she often clutches, a curious symbol etched into its surface, Clara falters. Her grip tightens on the chain, and her voice wavers as she denies any connection to the tales surrounding the artifact. Yet her nervous glance toward the library shelves and her reluctance to meet Eleanor's gaze speak louder than words. "I don't think you should dig too deeply," Clara whispers, the unease in her voice more pronounced than ever. The dunes, they have a way of taking what they want. Eleanor's final visit of the day is to Isaac Bram, a cartographer who lives at the edge of the village, his home cluttered with maps, compasses, and measuring instruments in various states of disrepair. The man himself is gaunt, his eyes shadowed with sleepless determination, and his hands stained with ink. His obsession with the dunes is evident in the scattered parchments strewn across the room, each bearing chaotic lines and markings that seem to shift and overlap. Despite his professed expertise, Isaac grows visibly anxious when Eleanor questions the accuracy of his maps, particularly when she references the faded map she found in the library. He brushes off her questions with a nervous chuckle, but his unease is impossible to miss. "The dunes, they're like nothing else," he says, his tone both awed and haunted. "They change faster than you can map them, as if they are alive." As the day fades into night, Eleanor returns to the inn, her mind a whirlwind of questions and doubts. Samuel's scars, Clara's pendant, and Isaac's erratic behavior, each thread adds to an increasingly tangled web of suspicion. The villagers' guarded behavior and cryptic warnings only deepen the mystery, leaving her to wonder who, if anyone, can be trusted. But as her thoughts churn, a chilling discovery halts her in her tracks. Scratched into the wood of her door, crude and unmistakable, are the words, "The dunes take all who pry." Her breath catches as she stares at the warning, the weight of the words sinking in. Sablemoor's secrets are growing darker, and the sands themselves seem to whisper that her investigation has not gone unnoticed. With the next phase of the journey in sight, Eleanor gathers a small group and sets out into the forbidding dunes, the faded map clutched tightly in her hands. Samuel Kane, his gruff demeanor unchanged, agrees to accompany them, though his reluctance is as evident as the scars marking his hands. Clara joins as well, her quiet nervousness barely concealed beneath the scarf she uses to shield herself from the biting wind. Isaac Bram, ever the enigmatic cartographer, insists on coming along, his ink-stained fingers trembling slightly as he packs a compass and a satchel full of hand-drawn maps. The four of them are an uneasy company, bound together by distrust and necessity. The dunes rise like frozen waves against the horizon, their golden expanses shifting subtly under the relentless breath of the wind. As they leave the shadow of Sablemoor behind, the village all but swallowed by distance, an eerie stillness envelops the group, broken only by the crunch of their footsteps and the occasional hiss of sand carried by the breeze. The map, already faded and cryptic, begins to lose its reliability as the terrain seems to warp and transform with every step. Landmarks marked on the parchment, an ancient ridge, an outcropping of jagged stones, are either missing or distorted, as though the dunes themselves are mocking their attempts to navigate. The sun sinks lower, casting the sands in hues of orange and crimson that deepen the shadows and blur the lines between what is real and imagined. The wind takes on a strange quality, its mournful howl interspersed with faint whispers that seem to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. Clara stops suddenly, her wide eyes scanning the horizon. "Did you hear that?" she murmurs, her voice barely audible over the wind. Samuel dismisses her with a grunt, but Eleanor notices his hand tighten around the hilt of a weathered knife tucked into his belt. Their first true obstacle arises as the group finds themselves inexplicably turned around, the dunes shifting underfoot like liquid gold. The map, once their only guide, no longer aligns with anything in their surroundings. Tempers flare. Samuel accuses Isaac of leading them astray, while Isaac defensively insists that no map, no matter how detailed, could account for the unnatural changes in the landscape. Eleanor steps between them, her voice steady but firm, urging them onward before the encroaching darkness can trap them completely. Just as the tension within the group reaches a peak, they stumble upon a chilling sight, a weathered hand protruding from the sand, skeletal fingers clutching a small, corroded object that glints faintly in the waning light. Eleanor kneels cautiously, brushing away the surrounding sand to reveal a rusted dagger with intricate carvings, its design unmistakably ancient. The discovery leaves them shaken, a stark reminder of the countless lives claimed by these treacherous sands. As night descends, the desert becomes a realm of shadows and moonlight, every movement at the edge of their vision a potential threat. Samuel's behavior grows increasingly erratic. He lingers behind the group, muttering to himself and disappearing momentarily without explanation, only to reappear with a terse remark and a harder edge in his voice. Clara clings tightly to her scarf, her breath shallow and rapid, while Isaac begins to jot frantic notes on another map that already seems doomed to obsolescence. Eventually, the group stumbles upon what appears to be an abandoned campsite. The tattered remains of a canvas tent flap in the wind, half buried by sand. Scattered around are the remnants of equipment, rusted lanterns, shattered glass, and a battered journal with pages torn and faded from exposure. Eleanor's heart skips as she picks up the journal, her fingers tracing the familiar handwriting within. It belonged to her mentor. The entries speak of strange lights that dance on the dunes, voices that call out in the night, and the ever-present sense of being watched. But one passage stands out, written hastily and smeared with dried ink. "Beware the traitor among us. Trust is a luxury we cannot afford." As the wind howls louder, carrying with it a faint and haunting melody, Eleanor closes the journal and looks up at the group. Doubts and secrets swirl around them like the sands, and the feeling that they are not alone settles heavily in her chest. The unknown stretches ahead, promising answers but threatening far greater peril. Moving forward, Eleanor's eyes catch a faint glimmer beneath a pile of sand near the remnants of her mentor's abandoned campsite. Kneeling down, she carefully brushes the grains away, revealing a small, reddish metallic shard. Its surface is smooth, yet marred with an unfamiliar symbol carved into its center, a symbol she vaguely recalls from the library's sketches of the crimson compass. She cradles the fragment in her hand, its weight strangely heavy for its size, almost as though it carried the burden of the countless souls who had sought it. Her breath quickens, the realization dawning that this could be a piece of the fabled artifact, the key that countless treasure hunters spoke of in hushed, fearful whispers before vanishing into the dunes. As the group gathers around her, the air seems to thicken with tension. Samuel's eyes narrow, suspicion flickering in his gaze, while Isaac stares at the shard with a mix of fascination and unease, his knuckles white as he grips his satchel. Clara steps back slightly, her scarf shielding part of her face, as if to conceal her reaction. Eleanor opens the battered journal once more, searching its worn pages for some connection, some clue. Her hands stop on an entry from her mentor, one that describes the crimson compass as both a guide and a curse. It shows the true path. The passage reads, scrawled in frantic handwriting, but at a cost. Those who wield it are marked, trapped in a cycle of betrayal and madness. The cryptic nature of the journal leaves much to interpretation, but the implications are clear enough to stir an unsettling quiet among the group. Eleanor shares her findings with Father Declan the following morning, hoping his knowledge of the dunes might provide clarity. Yet, to her surprise, his reaction is far from helpful. The moment she reveals the shard and mentions its possible link to the crimson compass, his usual composed demeanor shatters into one of visible fear. Declan's voice rises, trembling as he warns her to abandon the expedition. "You do not understand what you're dealing with," he insists, his hands gripping his prayer beads so tightly they leave red marks on his palms. Some truths are meant to stay buried. The compass is not salvation, it is ruin. His reaction only fuels Eleanor's determination, but a shadow of doubt lingers. Later that evening, she notices Clara lingering too long outside the inn. Through a sliver between the worn shutters, Eleanor catches sight of her speaking in hushed tones with someone obscured by the shadows. As Clara returns inside, she avoids Eleanor's questioning eyes, retreating silently to her room. Eleanor's mind races. Was Clara simply cautious, or was she hiding something far more consequential? The lines between ally and enemy blur as the dunes' shrouded mysteries begin to claim hold of each person's conscience. The shard is safely tucked into Eleanor's satchel, but its presence feels like a weight on her spirit. Each step closer to uncovering the truth seems to tighten an invisible noose, drawing her into a web of danger she can no longer ignore. Her discovery pushes her toward the heart of the dunes, but also into an abyss of suspicion and peril that threatens to consume her and her companions, just as it had so many others before them. With the next phase of the journey in sight, Eleanor steels herself for the perils that lie ahead. The morning sun casts an uneasy glow over the dunes, their shifting ridges resembling waves frozen in time, as if the sands themselves are watching. Eleanor, Samuel, Clara, and Isaac set out, the faded map clutched tightly in her hands, though its reliability seems increasingly dubious with each passing moment. The harsh wind whistles through the air, carrying with it faint, unearthly whispers that make the hairs on the back of their necks stand. Compasses, once their only assurance of direction, spin erratically, rendering their purpose null. Even their own footprints vanish within moments, as if erased by an unseen force. Tension within the group begins to rise, tempers flaring under the weight of the oppressive desert. Samuel's patience wears thin, his voice sharp as he questions Eleanor's judgment. Do you even know where you're leading us?" He snaps, his eyes blazing with a mix of fear and anger. His suspicions cast a long shadow over the group, but Elena refuses to back down. Clara, usually reserved, suddenly steps in, her voice trembling but firm. "The Dunes don't abide by our rules," she confesses, her words laced with a long-hidden truth. "My family has known this for generations. There are things here we were taught never to speak of." Her revelation sends a ripple of unease through the group. What other secrets might she be withholding? As the group presses deeper into the sands, their resolve is tested when they stumble upon a hidden shrine, half buried and marked with the unmistakable symbol of the Crimson Compass. Its crumbling walls bear carvings that depict an ancient tale, a stark and haunting story of betrayal and sacrifice etched into the stone. The carvings show figures kneeling before the compass, their faces twisted with anguish, while others stand behind them, wielding daggers. The air grows heavier within the shrine, as if the very walls are steeped in the sorrow of the past. Before anyone can fully process the discovery, the wind abruptly shifts, carrying with it an ominous howl. The tranquility shatters as a fierce sandstorm descends without warning, the dunes erupting in chaos. Sand whips around them, blinding and choking, forcing the group to seek refuge within the shrine. The storm's fury pounds against the fragile structure, each gust threatening to reduce it to rubble. Huddled together in the dim light, the group's collective fear is palpable. Samuel mutters curses under his breath, while Isaac grips his satchel tightly, as if the maps within it could somehow offer protection. Clara's eyes dart nervously, her earlier admission hanging heavily in the air. It is in this fleeting moment of uneasy shelter that Elena's gaze is drawn to the back of the shrine, where the carvings seem to give way to an opening. A narrow passage, previously obscured by sand, reveals itself like a gaping maw in the earth. The group approaches cautiously, their lantern casting flickering shadows on the ancient stone. The passage seems to beckon and warn all at once, its depths cloaked in impenetrable darkness. Though every instinct urges Elena to proceed, the weight of foreboding presses down on her chest. What lies below may hold the answers they seek, but it may also unearth threats far beyond their comprehension. As the storm's rage begins to wane, an uneasy stillness settles over the shrine. The group exchanges wary glances before turning their attention to the passage that has been revealed by the shifting sands. With the next phase of their journey inexorably calling, Elena leads the way, lantern in hand, casting trembling light into the suffocating darkness ahead. The passage is narrow, its walls etched with strange, angular carvings that seem to shift when touched by the flickering glow. The air is cooler here, carrying a faint metallic tang that hints at the age and secrets of this place. The group moves cautiously, their footsteps muffled by centuries of dust. As they descend deeper, remnants of a forgotten civilization begin to emerge. Broken pottery shards, trinkets of an unfamiliar design, and fragments of tools that seem both primitive and impossibly intricate litter the ground. The walls are adorned with murals, their faded colors just barely visible. These images reveal the Crimson Compass as a duality, its surface glinting with promised salvation in one scene, and in the next, unleashing untold devastation. Each mural seems to tell part of a story long lost to time, but the meanings, like the sands above, feel just out of reach. The passage abruptly widens, opening into a hidden chamber that leaves the group frozen in collective awe. In the center lies another fragment of the crimson compass, its reddish glow faint but undeniable. Surrounding it are artifacts arranged with an almost ceremonial precision, and directly opposite, a weathered chest. Eleanor approaches the chest with reverence, lifting its creaking lid to find an aged and tattered journal. She instantly recognizes the handwriting. It belongs to her mentor. Flipping through the fragile pages, Eleanor's face tightens as she reads. The entries are disjointed but laced with urgency. Her mentor had suspected someone in Sablemoor of betrayal, though the identity of the perpetrator remains maddeningly unclear. Perhaps most chilling of all is the ominous revelation that unlocking the full power of the compass demands a grave sacrifice. Eleanor's breath catches as this truth crystallizes. The cost of answers may be more than any of them are prepared to pay. The tension in the chamber thickens. Samuel's eyes lock onto the glowing artifact, his distrust of Eleanor now replaced with reckless ambition. If we take it, we can end this, he growls, stepping closer. In an instant, the fragile ceasefire within the group shatters. Samuel lunges for the compass fragment, but Eleanor intercepts him, her voice sharp with resolve. If you touch it without understanding, you'll doom us all. The struggle is brief but fierce, and Samuel relents, though his glare lingers like a warning. As the standoff cools, a distinct sound prickles at the edges of their hearing, a faint but deliberate shuffle coming from the passage they had just traversed. The group freezes, every nerve on edge. Something, or someone, is out there, and it is no longer content to remain in the shadows. As the next challenge unfolds, the group's tense return to Sablemoor is weighed down by more than just exhaustion. Eleanor's mind races, piecing together the fragments of revelations from the chamber and her mentor's journal. The journal's cryptic warning about betrayal sinks in deeper, its truth echoing in every cautious glance exchanged among her companions. The village greets them with an air of unease, the usual muted whispers now conspicuously absent, as if even the dunes themselves are holding their breath. Eleanor knows time is slipping away, and with it, the chance to uncover the true antagonist behind the chaos that has consumed Sablemoor. She begins her inquiry with Isaac Bram, the seemingly reclusive cartographer, whose obsessive knowledge of the dunes had always felt too convenient. Cornering him in his cluttered workshop, she confronts him with the maps he had drawn, maps alarmingly similar to the one her mentor had left behind. Though his initial reaction is one of indignant denial, Eleanor presses further, her tone sharpened with the urgency of her discovery. Cracks of guilt begin to show in Isaac's carefully constructed facade. He confesses to using his maps to guide treasure hunters into the sands, driven by greed and the allure of the Crimson Compass. But he swears he had no hand in the recent disappearances, claiming his ambition stopped short of causing harm. His trembling voice and shifting gaze suggest he may be withholding more, but Eleanor senses he is not the mastermind she seeks. Her next clue lies within the coded message scribbled in the journal's fragile margins. Late into the night, she deciphers it, the puzzle unraveling to point squarely at Clara's pendant, the one she had clung to so protectively. Suspicion and a glimmer of hope push Eleanor to confront Clara, who initially recoils, caught between fear and guilt. With measured resolve, Eleanor implores her to reveal what she knows, emphasizing the danger that looms larger with every passing moment. Hesitation gives way to confession as Clara reveals the pendant's hidden compartment, where Eleanor discovers a vital clue, an intricate fragment that perfectly matches the Crimson Compass. Clara admits that she had been safeguarding her family's legacy, a role passed down through generations, believing she was protecting the artifact's pieces from falling into the wrong hands. Yet she also reveals that her trust had been misplaced, manipulated by someone she had thought was an ally. Her trembling words paint a picture of betrayal, but the full story remains elusive. The final piece of the puzzle falls into place in a shocking twist. Eleanor pieces together the scattered fragments of evidence, and her gaze turns to the village priest, Father Declan. His words, always laced with warnings about the dunes, now felt more like veiled intentions. Under the pretense of seeking clarity, Eleanor confronts him in the dim confines of the church. His calm demeanor falters as her questions cut closer to the truth. Slowly, the mask of righteousness slips, revealing a man consumed by his own dark ambitions. Declan admits to exploiting the legends to cover his crimes, using fear to keep the villagers silent and suspicion away from himself. His ultimate goal had always been the Crimson Compass, believing its power could grant him dominion over the dunes and those who dared to defy him. The final confirmation comes when he produces the last piece of the compass from beneath his robes, his eyes glinting with unrestrained greed. Before Eleanor can act, Declan flees into the dunes, the sand swallowing his form as if the desert itself conspires to aid him. The weight of his betrayal hangs heavy in the quiet that follows, but Eleanor's resolve only hardens. With the pieces of the compass scattered and danger pressing in from all sides, she knows the final confrontation is inevitable, and the cost of failure will be felt far beyond the shifting sands of Sablemoor. With the next phase of the journey in sight, Eleanor and her remaining allies plunge into the vast expanse of the dunes, the cold light of the moon casting long, ghostly shadows over the ever-shifting landscape. The desert seems to breathe around them, the whispering winds carrying an eerie promise of danger ahead. Each step feels heavier, the sands dragging at their feet as if warning them to turn back. But Eleanor's resolve is unshakable. The betrayal, the fragments of the compass, and the lives lost all fuel her determination to see this through. Father Declan's trail is faint but unmistakable, marked by hurried footprints that are quickly fading under the restless dunes. The chase is grueling, the terrain unforgiving. The towering dunes rise and fall like waves, frozen in time, and the group's progress becomes a battle against the elements. The air grows dense, the heat from the day lingering even under the coolness of night, while the wind picks up, swirling sand into blinding gusts. Yet just as exhaustion threatens to claim them, a faint glimmer on the horizon catches Eleanor's attention. A light, faint and otherworldly, pulsing like a heartbeat in the distance. It beckons them forward, guiding them to the heart of the dunes where the truth awaits. As they crest the final dune, the ground below them transforms. Smooth, polished stone emerges from beneath the sand, forming the outline of an ancient temple buried deep within the desert. At its center stands Father Declan, the fragments of the Crimson Compass now assembled in his hands, glowing with an unnatural reddish hue. His voice, usually measured and calm, now echoes with frenzied triumph as he declares his intention to harness the compass's power. The air hums with energy, the compass casting shifting patterns of light that ripple across the sand and stone. Eleanor shouts for him to stop, but Declan is beyond reason. He raises the compass high, its glow intensifying until it bathes the entire temple in a sinister light. The ground trembles beneath their feet, and a deep, resonant sound fills the air as though the desert itself is groaning in protest. The compass, however, does not grant the dominion Decl, and so desperately seeks. Instead, its curse awakens, the ancient power rejecting his unworthy claim. The light turns blinding, and cracks begin to spread across the temple's surface. The sands around them roar to life, spiraling upward in a violent storm, as if the desert is reclaiming what has been disturbed. In the chaos, Eleanor and Clara fight to stay on their feet, shielding their eyes from the torrent of sand and debris. Declan's triumphant cries turn to panicked screams as the compass slips from his grasp, its glow now wild and uncontrollable. The temple begins to collapse, its ancient structure crumbling under the weight of the awakened curse. The sands surge forward like a living entity, swallowing the stone, the compass, and Declan himself, leaving no trace behind. Grasping Clara's hand, Eleanor pulls her toward the edge of the crumbling site, narrowly avoiding the cascade of sand that threatens to consume them. With one final leap, they tumble onto solid ground, just as the last remnants of the temple vanish beneath the dunes, the desert returning to an eerie silence. Kneeling in the sand, catching her breath, Eleanor looks back at the spot where the temple once stood. The crimson compass is gone, taken by the sands along with its dark promises of power. The immediate danger has passed, but the mystery of the dunes remains. Eleanor feels the weight of unanswered questions pressing on her, the true nature of the compass and the ancient forces behind it still veiled in secrecy. As she and Clara rise, the desert around them seems unchanged, as if nothing had ever transpired, and yet the air carries a strange stillness, a reminder that the dunes are far from ordinary, their secrets buried but never truly gone. With the next phase of the journey in sight, Eleanor finds herself back in Sablemoor, the once desolate village now stirring with tentative hope. The oppressive gloom that had hung over the villagers seems to have lifted, replaced by cautious whispers of relief. Some dare to step out into the open, their eyes scanning the horizon, as if testing whether the curse that haunted the dunes has truly been laid to rest. Eleanor, however, is not so easily convinced. Sitting by a window in the quiet corner of the inn, she sifts through her mentor's journal once more, piecing together fragments of the story that feel like they still hold untold truths. The journal's faded pages reveal cryptic observations she had overlooked before, mentions of symbols linked to the crimson compass, references to unseen forces guarding the dunes, and notes that suggest her mentor had intended to explore even deeper into the desert before his disappearance. Each word fuels her suspicion that the compass was only part of a larger, more intricate puzzle. Could there be more buried beneath those endless sands? Or was the compass merely a warning of the dangers that await those who dare to pry too deeply? Clara, now free from her burdensome secrecy, approaches Eleanor with a quiet determination. She has made her decision to remain in Sablemoor, hoping to honor her family's legacy by protecting the villagers from the lingering mysteries of the dunes. Her voice wavers with a mix of regret and resolve as she speaks of atonement, of making peace with the role her ancestors played in safeguarding the compass and its curse. Eleanor nods, understanding the weight of Clara's decision. For her, the pull of the unknown remains irresistible. As the sun sets, painting the dunes in shades of gold and crimson, Eleanor prepares to leave the village. She packs her belongings methodically, her thoughts divided between the answers she has found and the questions that continue to haunt her. Standing at the edge of Sablemoor, she turns to face the vast desert one last time. The winds are calm now, the sands appearing motionless under the dimming light. Yet as she listens closely, a faint whisper reaches her ears, carried by the breeze like an echo of a voice long forgotten. It is a reminder that the dunes, though quiet for now, will always guard their secrets. Just as she steps onto the road leading away from Sablemoor, a rider approaches, handing her a sealed envelope with no return address. Eleanor feels a chill run through her as she breaks the wax seal and unfolds the letter. The handwriting is unfamiliar, but the message is unmistakable. It speaks of another mystery, distant yet as compelling as the dunes that have consumed her thoughts. She reads the words carefully, her pulse quickening with each line. Whatever lies ahead, she knows it will lead her toward answers, or perhaps further into the labyrinth of peril and discovery she has come to know so well. With the letter clutched in her hand, Eleanor takes a deep breath and begins her journey once more, leaving Sablemoor behind. The dunes, now a silent silhouette against the horizon, seem to watch her departure. Their whispers fade into the night, but their presence lingers, a subtle promise that her story, and theirs, is far from over. As the sun rises on the next chapter, we reflect on the journey through the deadly dunes, a story of unanswered questions, ancient secrets, and the unrelenting pull of the unknown. Eleanor's pursuit of truth reveals not just the allure of what lies hidden, but also the profound risks that come with uncovering it. The dunes, with their shifting sands and whispered warnings, stand as a testament to the weight of history and the enduring mysteries that guard it. They remind us that some truths demand a price, and some secrets, once unearthed, can never truly be buried again. The resilience of those like Eleanor, who seek the truth despite the perils, serves as a powerful reminder of the courage required to face the uncertain. And yet, for every answer found, a new question emerges, an endless puzzle urging us to look deeper, search further, and never settle for the surface. The whispers of the dunes may have quieted, but their presence lingers, a silent promise that mysteries remain waiting to be uncovered. What would you have done in Eleanor's place? Would you dare to venture into the shifting sands, knowing the dangers they hold? Share your thoughts, theories, or interpretations of the story in the comments below. And if you enjoyed unraveling the mysteries of the dunes, be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another journey into the unknown. Until next time, remember, the sands may seem still, but their secrets are never truly at rest.